Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's APM webinar, Mentoring for Personal and Professional Development. I'm delighted that Richard is joining us today to share knowledge on this key area. Richard has kindly given up his time previously, and you can find this recording on APM YouTube. We've also got an upcoming event next month, so have a look out for that. My name's Robert Allen, APM Branches Manager, and I work with the volunteers in the APM branches and SIGs, and I would personally like to say thank you for all your efforts with the webinars over the last 18 months. It's great to see so many people with us, and we will be using Slido today. On screen you'll see the Slido account. Please go to Slido or use the QR code on your phone to take you directly there. In the handouts you'll find additional information, but some key information about recording your CPD. There's 1 hour's worth of CPD linked to today's event. So it gives me great pleasure to pass over to Richard. Richard, over to you.
Fantastic. So, Rob, do I need to share my slides again, or has that been? Here we go. So, are you able to see my slides okay, Rob?
Yes, good to go.
Fantastic, excellent. Well, I saw the Slido taking shape before you pass control over to me, and it looks like we've got quite a mix of perspectives from people on the call. So good afternoon, everybody. The good news is I'm covering all of the aspects within the Slido. I just really wanted to try and understand what people were most interested in to try and set the right kind of pace and the right emphasis for this afternoon. So just by way of introduction, as you can see, I work for Sopra Steria, a large, kind of fairly well established, but not often heard of organisation in the world of IT services, consulting and digital transformation. And I'm Director of Program Project Management. So I run a practice of 437 program project professionals, project managers, program managers, colleagues in PMO type of roles. And one of my passions professionally and personally is mentoring. And you'll notice on the middle part of the opening slide, I talk about an epiphany. So I'm 55 years old, and when I was 54 years and 11 months in December, as part of my job, we were setting objectives for next year. I was thinking about my role, and it just really struck me the kind of things about my role that I enjoy, really the things I get out of bed for. And a lot of that is developing people, developing our program project managers. I run a mentoring program within Sopra Steria, and that very obvious kind of thought struck me. And so I've now ventured into coaching as well. During the course of this year, I'm doing a coaching accreditation, and I'd like to explore being a coach, perhaps as I move towards retirement, rather than necessarily doing program project management things as I do now. And I think the other thing I would say, and particularly why I'm keen to deliver this particular presentation, which is talking about mentoring for development, is that my reflection is over the last 4 years when I've been in this role, I've developed most in terms of self-awareness. That's made me feel more fulfilled in what I do, more attached to my organisation, and the biggest positive influence on that, and probably the biggest positive influence for me throughout my career, has been mentoring. And that really is the context for this afternoon's discussion. So quick sense check. Rob, have you seen the slides move on okay? I'm on my second slide, okay?
Yep, it's transitioning well.
Perfect, that's great, thank you. So this is a really topical thought that got triggered only a couple of weeks ago, 6th of July. I was watching telly and we'd managed to get on Channel 5 Emma Raducanu in the final of the US Open. And the picture you can see on the screen was in July when Emma was in Wimbledon, had a really good run. And then, as you know, she withdrew from the competition, breathing difficulties. And a lot was said in the media about what had caused that. And speculation about kind of like mental health and well-being, as you can imagine. And then as recently as a couple of weeks ago, she won the US Open. First qualifier ever to win the championship, didn't drop a set. And it was very dramatic at the end. I'm sure most of you saw it, or at least have seen the coverage subsequently. She had an injury. Things were going a little bit against her at the time, and she bounced back. It really was one of the most incredible kind of sporting achievements I've seen in my lifetime. And it just made me think, what was the biggest difference that took Emma from a really untimely exit from Wimbledon to actually dominating the US Open. And a very strong theory, not mine personally, although I really do believe in it, and this was something out of the Times the following Monday morning, early hours, so this was sort of coming out of the night on the Saturday in UK time, and a lot of coverage for the role that Tim Henman played as a mentor. And I'm thinking, well, if ever I wanted a really good, topical, practical example of the power of mentoring, I've got it right there, because I think Emma is very relatable. She's very topical. She's very much in demand in media circles. And that's just a great way to kind of showcase what mentoring can look like when it's effective and when it's set in the right context. So this afternoon, and kind of going back a little bit to the Slido, what I've tried to do is try and cover a number of interest areas, including people who are already mentors and people who are experienced mentors, because I think, what I've found in my 50s, you never stop learning, you never stop developing, and sometimes a moment of clarity really spurs you on to great things and opens your mind to other ideas. So I feel like I'm a kind of a champion, as it were, for mentoring in a sense. I really want to kind of promote it positively. And as I say, I run a mentoring program within Sopra Steria. I'm mentoring outside of Sopra Steria on a mentoring program for women in technology. We have mentoring programs I'm part of within our business for graduates who enter the business for diversity and inclusion. I think it's a really powerful thing. And so, Rob, I don't know if you could just summarise what the final kind of outcomes on the Slido were in terms of those interest areas, could you please?
Yeah, no, certainly. So the leading percentage was I want to understand more about mentoring at 41%. I'm thinking about starting a mentoring relationship at 29%. 18% I'm in a mentoring relationship. 12% I'm an experienced mentor, and 0% for the remaining answer.
Okay, excellent. So that's a good coverage. So I think if I do the maths right, about 70% of people on the call would like to understand more, or are perhaps more actively thinking about being in a mentoring relationship. So I'm really hopeful that you'll get some insights around that. That's helpful for you. And I'm really hopeful as well that people already involved in mentoring, either as a mentee or a mentor, also get something positive and something new out of this call. And there will be a Slido later to try and establish how effective I am in achieving that goal. So our roadmap for the day is a little bit of getting started and some context I'm going to set. And I'm going to talk a little bit about coaching and mentoring. And I think particularly for people who are more developed in their career, they've got perhaps more span of control, they've got more accountability. Quite often there is a consideration towards whether it's coaching or mentoring that would be most beneficial. But then I'll just work through talking about what mentoring is and try and take some of the mystique out of it and just give it a better definition, and then really major on the benefits, how it's a benefit to people being mentored, how it's a benefit to people like me, how it's really helped my development and something I really enjoy actually being a mentor. And then just a little bit of thought towards, the critical success factors for an effective mentoring relationship. So just to start with, what I really wanted to explore is we talk about professional development and personal development like they're two different things, but they're really two sides of the same coin for me. And you can see that little Venn diagram kind of effect in the middle, where there's things that we develop from the point we're born, as we go through childhood, as we go through school, as we go through college, university, start working life, all of those lifetime kind of journeys. You build behavioral kind of skills, you build qualities, you build personality traits, and self-awareness is a really key thing for fulfillment and well-being in our personal lives. And also in terms of career development, it's very much the kind of the fuel that takes people on their journey. And the other thing, of course, particularly being mindful of COVID and how difficult that was for people on many levels, is that difficult experiences in your professional life can very often cast a shadow, as it were, over your personal life. And so these two things are really, really closely linked. And that's one of the things I'd like you just to sort of keep in the back of your mind, as it were, as we go through this afternoon's discussion. And then the other thing, when I last did one of these presentations with Rob recently, I was talking about career development for program and project managers. And I was talking, and I used this slide actually, talking about how as you develop your professional career, the three foundation elements are knowledge, experience, and behaviours. And by behaviours, I could be talking about things like communication skills, listening skills, presentation skills. And for people who get more senior down their program project management career, and they're responsible for large contracts and large budgets and diverse teams and clients, all of those kind of things, behavioural skills of influence and negotiation are critical. So these three foundation elements are always important, but the relative importance changes over time as you go through your career. And so in my role, where I've got a real focus on developing program project managers of all kind of age groups, of all kind of demographics, of all kind of levels of seniority, what I absolutely see and what we absolutely try and plan for is that building knowledge and building experience are great, but you can only get so far based upon a lot of knowledge, a breadth of knowledge, and a real kind of depth of experience, because the fundamental thing that will propel you forward and break you through that kind of barrier is those behavioural skills. And ultimately, the way I always couch this is when we think about projects and we think about the definition of a project that the APM use, for example, it's great and that's factual. But one of the ways that I encourage people to look at projects is they're delivered by people, with people, for people, and therefore relationships, understanding the differences in people, understanding different ways that people learn, different ways want to be engaged. That is a fundamental must as we become increasingly effective in how we deliver programs and projects. So that's a little bit of the context. So please bear those two thoughts in mind. And I just wanted to explore coaching a little bit. And the reason I wanted to do that is, as I said, in the one respect, I think that quite often a learning and development relationship, which is what mentoring is, can be most effective if it's a coaching relationship as opposed to mentoring. And the two things are very closely aligned. So I wanted to start to introduce a concept of how mentoring and coaching fit in kind of a learning and development spectrum. So teaching, things we'll always be used to from our childhood, is the most what we call directive method of learning and development. The teacher, quite literally tells you what the knowledge is that you need to learn. And that's great. But in a lot of ways, and particularly in a professional environment, you need to be able to contextualize the knowledge and understand how it kind of fits in with what you're doing. And also the experience of doing is a much more powerful long-term learning kind of method than being told things and writing things in an exercise book. And in the middle of the spectrum, you've got coaching and mentoring. As you can see from the kind of the circles that overlap the Venn diagram kind of effect, they are very closely related. And we'll explore that for a little bit, because quite often coaching is very misunderstood, because people, and this was me, I was brought up with a real passion for football. Most of my 20s, I was playing football. I was thinking about football more than I was thinking about work as well. And so I just assumed that coaching was always undertaking in a sporting kind of context. And so the coaches had some kind of expertise in their field. In reality, what we'll hear about now, you'll hear about life coaching, you'll hear about executive kind of coaching. But where we're talking about coaching in a professional context for learning and for development, it's very, very different to the concept of a sports coach being very, very prescriptive and having all of the knowledge. And actually, the practice of coaching and how that's grown, from the 1980s principally, that's had a major influence on how we look at mentoring today and what mentoring looks like today and the best practice around mentoring. And a lot of it hinges down to this term that I'm sure most of you will have heard in a professional sense about being directive or being non-directive. And so at the one end of the spectrum, you've got this very directive style, which is teaching. You are being told. you're being given the answers. You're being given facts that you're supposed to sort of digest and interpret. At the other end of the scale, where we talk about being non-directive, this is really where coaching lives 100%, and mentoring lives and kind of branches out a little bit down the spectrum. And this is about potential within people. So some great words I think for you guys to think about when we talk about mentoring is non-directive. And one of the great words, again, I'd ask you to keep in mind as we go through this afternoon, is that word potential. And so as a mentor, as a coach, you ask a lot of questions, you listen really closely, and you listen, we talk about active listening. So it's listening to the words, which is important, but it's looking at posture, looking at what you might call body language, listening to the tone of voice. It's really trying to understand the full context of what's being said and what sits behind the words in many ways. And through that, through the exploration of open, searching kind of questions and that active kind of listening, you build an awareness within the mentee or the coachee. So we talk about coaches and the person that they're coaching, we call the coachee. When we talk about mentoring, the mentor has a mentee. That's where the relationships kind of sit. And it's about really trying to build awareness and really help somebody who's being mentored or someone who's being coached start to come to their own conclusions, their own realization, and most of all, identifying their own potential. So we'll explore that in a little bit more detail. But one of the things that I think is a really good kind of little story to tell, to put this into context, one of the major things that brought coaching in terms of life coaching, executive coaching, very much more into our everyday kind of landscape did actually come from sport. And a guy called Tim Galway, and that spelling is correct, it's not Galway, it is Galway. He was a tennis coach, and he designed and actually, publicised and used to go and talk about and talk to other sporting coaches about, which is something called the inner game. And very simply put, and it's a book all in its own right. It's fascinating, but in very simple terms, what Galway was saying was that the tennis player in this instance had two kind of selves. So they had their everyday kind of self, their outward kind of persona, but the second self was the voices in your mind that bring doubt into the equation. So a good example is me playing golf. If I go out onto a tee on a golf course and it's wide open and I've got several fairways to choose from, I naturally kind of relax and I'll just hit a golf ball, and by and large things will be okay. If I then go to the next hole and I'm stood on the tee and I'm stood staring down 200 yards of a really narrow fairway with a forest on the right and a forest on the left, the voices in my head will tell me I'm going to go and smack a golf ball into the trees, and that's what happens. So the inner voices, where the doubt comes from, where the self-doubt comes from, he described as interference. And ultimately, his equation, very simply, as you can see, is that performance as a tennis player is about your potential to be good at tennis and about the interference that might prevent that. And he focused much more on removing interference than he did on the practicing of serving, hitting a tennis ball, practicing your volleys. The biggest gains he found were in mental strength and mental stamina. And that really takes me back to Emma Raducanu and my imagining what was going on in her professional life in that small number of weeks between Wimbledon and the US Open. And I think another thing I'll just say now, and I do talk about this in a moment, is about potential and performance. Think about those words and think about your workplace. What you do as a day job and where you work and the people you work with and how you're taken through appraisals. How often you hear the word potential relative to how often you hear the word performance. That's just a little kind of open question. So before we move on and actually talk about mentoring, having set the context and having kind of explained a little bit about what mentoring and coaching are, but particularly to try and bring coaching into the conversation, Rob has very kindly set up another Slido, and I'll just be really keen for you guys to kind of explore coaching in this instance.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. I can see some people have already started to complete the question, but for those that haven't got access to Slido yet, QR code top left-hand corner to access it via your camera on your phone or another web browser, slido.com, and then the event code is APM Mentoring. But I can see some answers are coming in, Richard. I don't know if you can see those, but I'll happily read those.
I can. So it's kind of as I suspected. I'm seeing it's just gone down 60%, but I'm seeing the majority have undertaken some degree of coaching in the workplace, and that's a positive kind of metric because it's a really powerful way to help develop people. And we've got a good percentage that let's call it 40% round numbers who haven't really been involved or experienced coaching. And so the reason I put this up, other than again to sort of try and work out where to put the emphasis as we move through this afternoon, is that I really passionately believe, and I've spent 4 years looking closely at developing program project managers, that we need to put more of the emphasis around releasing potential into the workplace. And whilst mentoring and coaching often work really well when it's somebody outside of your direct workplace, the principles of coaching and the principles of mentoring being kind of ingrained in our line managers and actually in program project managers themselves, who have a massive role to play in terms of how they get the people around them to engage, to work, to perform. The realization that the major focus and the major benefit we've yet to tap into is the potential starts to drive different behaviours and different kind of engagement. So out of an awareness from today, what I really hope is that people will see something that will benefit them, but also might well see something that they think that will benefit them or their colleagues in their workplace. And the more that we divorce, development around leadership, development around, communications, that's done somewhere else away from the workplace. I think we need to divorce that. And the more that we put that naturally into the workplace, and we've got managers and we've got leaders, including program project managers, clearly, who have that kind of awareness, have that kind of thought process, we will drive a significant degree of improved results within our projects, within our programs, within our business. So thank you for that, Rob. Really, I noticed the percentages have dropped a little bit as people have gone through the deck, but that's really helpful context. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard, and thank you everyone for getting involved. Just a quick mention, if you've got any questions for Richard, please submit these via your control panel. There'll be a part during this presentation that I can put to Richard. If not, we'll save them for the end. Back to you, Richard.
Fantastic. Thank you, Rob. So hopefully I'm back on my slides. So this is the introduction to mentoring. And there's a definition there. So Davids, Megginson and Clutterbuck, they're two of the most foremost people in the world of mentoring. So the more you look at mentoring and coaching, kind of academic work and the kind of philosophy and ethos around that, those two names will feature very heavily. And they really did, in the 1980s, an awful lot to bring mentoring into the mainstream kind of business culture, bring it into businesses in terms of leadership development and leadership kind of training. To the extent now, I think we've still got some ways to go within the UK, but there's a predominance of mentoring awareness and mentoring kind of programs in a lot of organisations now, and it's becoming increasingly part of the fabric of how we do business and how we develop people in all kind of professions. So mentoring goes back, as the story goes, to ancient Greece and the siege of Troy. And when Homer wrote about that in his book, The Odyssey, he talked about Odysseus, one of the kings, so one of the real protagonists in the siege of Troy. He asked a gentleman called Mentor, and that's where the name comes from, to look after his son while he was away fighting in the Trojan War. And that's really where the name Mentor comes, and it's come to be synonymous in the UK, in the US, and predominantly through Europe as meaning somebody who imparts wisdom, shares knowledge, brings experience, and kind of nurtures a younger, less experienced, less senior colleague. That's the kind of the historic kind of perspective. As we move forward now, what we really do is we talk about mentoring the way it really is and the way it should be looked at, which is a learning and development relationship. And relationships, as you know, take two people to work, and they take a number of good ingredients to work, one of which is trust. So it's two people working in a position of mutual trust. And whilst the mentor may be seen as being more senior, more experienced, it's a peer relationship because both people are benefiting and both people are equal. It's not something done as a favour by the mentor. It's not something that in my experience, is ever paid for by the mentee, but it's non-directive, going back to our previous definition. It's asking questions, it's listening, it's interpreting, it's guiding, and it's all about unlocking potential. And so the mentor, by and large, is more experienced. They are more knowledgeable and they are more senior by and large. We're talking a little bit about different types of mentoring and how mentoring has evolved into different kind of flavours. And typically, a mentor will come from the same or a comparable professional background, and they'll be able to provide guidance around personal professional development in a professional kind of context. So they'll bring some subject matter expertise and they'll bring some insight. And the mentor is giving back. They're not expecting any kind of direct reward. We'll test this a little bit. And if I give an example, a call I was on that ended half hour before this one is within our business, we have a program we call Ignite, which is for a range of people within our business who've perhaps been in our business for a couple of years or so. So they've got a business grounding, but they're at an early stage in their career, and they're taken through a leadership and development program, and they're given mentors. So I'm a mentor for a team of 5 people on this Ignite program. They all work for the same business that I do, but they come from different backgrounds domestically. They come from different backgrounds professionally. And so the concept that I need to know their role inside out to be an effective mentor is tested, and actually that's not necessarily true. But historically and generally, mentoring programs are normally established with that commonality of professional kind of context around it. But very much the mutually beneficial part is really, really important. So by and large, what a good mentor would do is, and the phrase, the mentee's agenda, or in coaching, people talk about the client's agenda, that's really important. And what it really means as a mentor is not to impose your experience onto the situation. It's to have experience available, insight available, knowledge available, if it helps the mentee with whatever challenge they're trying to deal with, whatever opportunity they're trying to explore. And by and large, the mentor will listen carefully because this is all about awareness. And it's about awareness for the mentor to really understand how they can best guide and support the mentee. But mostly, it's about trying to raise awareness in the mentee by asking good questions. And open questions are those that basically prevent a yes-no answer and cause a degree of thought and kind of introspection. And confirming their understanding by playing it back and by paraphrasing just to make sure things are really understood. Encouraging the mentee to reflect and look back and think, and doing it in a structured way by applying coaching models and techniques. And so what all this does, if it's effective, encourages the mentee to find their own answer because they become increasingly aware and they start to identify potential. And so to do that, it's not always the same formulaic kind of approach, far from it, but a mentor, going back to that spectrum of directive and non-directive, they'll take certain roles based on the circumstances and where the conversation's going with the mentee. They're reacting to the mentee rather than imposing, but they may play a role of trusted advisor. I'm sure you'll understand the phrase critical kind of friend, where your intentions are great, but you're trying to kind of identify a little bit of a new approach or a new style perhaps. And sometimes you will coach in the definition that I used previously. And sometimes you'll go and be an advocate or a sponsor and help your mentee through opening up connections and your network. And so mentors have to be very adaptable and they have to read the situation, but most of all, they've got to think carefully, listen even more carefully, and establish a real understanding about, what their mentee's agenda is, what their mentee's goals are. And the great thing, for people like me, and this is why I talk about it's really develop my self-awareness, you do a lot of listening, and I think people in more senior roles tend naturally in group scenarios do more of the talking than of the listening. And so to really define and develop your own kind of self-awareness, your own listening skills, you need to practice that. And quite often in the workplace, it isn't a natural thing to practice, particularly where you're supposed to be chairing a meeting or driving an outcome. So staying on the mentee's agenda is paramount. And a successful mentoring relationship, and I re-emphasize the word relationship, is non-directive. So you don't get the mentor, imposing their will or their perspective. The mentee takes responsibility, which is a key kind of phrase. And by and large, a mentoring discussion will end with a reflection on behalf of the mentee and a conversation about action. And ultimately, change comes with action. So the mentoring relationship isn't a discussion without purpose. It's building awareness to try and help the mentee identify, against the goals that they've got, against the kind of progression they want to make, what will they do? But ultimately, what's important is that the relationships are voluntary. So, in a situation as well intended as it's been, something I've seen where people are told they're going to be mentored, that's flawed. Because ultimately we're on a journey here when we talk about mentoring. And if it isn't a conscious decision made by the mentee from a position of understanding what mentoring is and from a position of seeing the value in it, the opportunity will either be lost or it will be suboptimal. The mentoring relationship will start, but it will soon kind of flounder and lose its momentum and lose its value. And equally, the mentor has to see this as an opportunity that they accept. And so at the start of a mentoring relationship, as we'll explore in a moment, you have a set of discussions. You build upon shared values, you build upon trust, you establish rapport, and you create the foundations for a successful relationship as you would in a relationship in life, whether it's family, whether it's friends, whether it's something more romantic that might lead to a lasting kind of union. You build that common ground, you build that understanding, you work at it, you listen, you understand on both sides. It's a relationship in every sense of the word. The success is driven by a purpose, and the purpose comes from the mentee. The mentee wants to be mentored because ... And those options and those reasons are quite broad, and we'll talk about that in a moment. But the mutual trust is important because you have to feel confident as a mentee to explain exactly what's going on in your mind, exactly what's going on at work, and exactly what your objectives are. You have to trust the other person with information which is quite personal by nature. But ultimately, mentoring relationships have to be mutually beneficial. And people thinking about mentoring, thinking of people about being mentored, I would really emphasize at this point how beneficial it is to the mentor as well. So don't feel inhibited and feel that you're asking somebody for a favor. I've got actively, as of right now, 8 mentoring relationships. It's a little bit of a strain on my time, but I get something really positive and really tangible out of it. And please don't lose sight of that if you're thinking about being mentored or you're in a mentoring relationship. Mentoring relationships are temporary, but temporary doesn't mean that they're quick or they're short. It means that they have a purpose, and if a mentoring relationship is successful, the mentee will reach their goals. They'll achieve their objectives. Sometimes you recalibrate the relationship and it carries on. Sometimes the mentee needs a different learning and development solution, and it builds over time. And therefore, because it does build over time, there needs to be commitment on both sides, as it does with any relationship. So, bringing this part of the discussion to a close, mentoring relationships most typically are established on a one-to-one basis, a mentor and a mentee. But the way that mentoring has evolved, I'm in discussions on Monday around something called reverse mentoring, for example. So you can see different types down the bottom. Short-term transactional kind of mentoring is kind of, as the name implies, I think speed mentoring makes me think of speed dating. I've not taken part in that, but I understand what it is. peer-to-peer is sometimes where you get mentoring relationships between two people who are at the same kind of professional level, and they're bouncing ideas off one another in an informal sense. But you don't have to have that difference of seniority or experience to make a mentoring relationship work. Reverse mentoring, which I'm really fascinated by, is used increasingly within business for diversity and inclusion, but also, for example, for technology. So there's been a really good case study done historically around Ford, the motor company, who did this. In Sopra Steria, we've done it through our graduate program, where our graduates tend to come in with a lot more nous understanding, savvy around technology, how technology is used, social media, how people engage. And so they literally, as the name implies, reverse mentoring, they will provide a mentorship to our leadership team. They will talk to them about it through their own eyes. And in the same way, diversity inclusion, we do reverse mentoring where people who perhaps identify as being in an ethnic minority or women or people with some degree of disability or neurodiversity will share their stories in a way that they're reverse mentoring and creating an awareness within leadership and management teams. With awareness comes understanding, with understanding comes change, and helping people engage better and helping people learn better. So it's a really powerful thing. And increasingly, I think you'll see in social media channels like LinkedIn a much greater prevalence of reference to reverse mentoring over time. But that effectively is the introduction to mentoring. And so given that there's a number of people who joined the call who said that was their kind of interest group, I just wanted to pause and check, Rob, are there any questions in the chat window at this point it'd be sensible or helpful for me to address?
Yeah, nice. Certainly. Thank you, Richard. Yeah, we've had a couple of questions. We've had a question from Richard. I assure everyone this isn't Richard submitting questions for Richard, but Richard has said, is it best to have a mentor within your industry, organisation, sector, or does it really matter?
It depends. By and large, I'd say yes, but it's not an imperative. It depends largely, Richard, what your goals are and what you want to achieve through mentoring. And if your goals are more closely aligned to your workplace and your professional kind of circumstances, then the more understanding that your mentor has of your industry and of your environment will be more helpful. But it's not essential.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard, for the question, and thank you, Richard, for the answer. Second part of Richard's question is it wise to have more than one mentor?
It can well, absolutely, it can well be. So that the established thinking that it's one-to-one and people have one mentoring relationship at a time, I would really challenge that. And I'll give you a good example. So in the program I work on, the mentoring for women in technology, quite often the people who come on as mentees have a number of different goals they want to achieve. And some of them are very subject matter expert specific. So it could be about cyber security, for example, in which case you're never going to find one mentor who can cover all of your aspirations. So if you're looking at leadership on one hand, cybersecurity on the other, why wouldn't you go and engage with two different people with two different sets of objectives in mind? So I would recommend it. I would say, don't spread yourself too thin, because it's a commitment, it's a relationship, it needs to be nurtured. But quite often, when you look at your goals and you get under the bonnet a little bit, you'll realise you're never going to find one person who can do all of those subjects justice.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. Mike has asked, what practical steps can we take to build a mentoring culture within an organisation?
I really like that question. Could I hold that one towards the end? We might start to touch on a couple of things that might help influence that answer, if that's okay.
Yeah, not a problem at all. Mike has a second part, and he said, what are your thoughts on reciprocal mentoring?
Well, so I think so we're getting into a little bit more of a specialist area. I think I'd rather take that as question one at the end, Rob, if we could. Yeah, what I would say now is one of the beauties of mentoring is you get this three-way win. You get a win for the mentee, who gets the benefits of being mentored. The mentor, as I've explained, and using myself as an example, gets massive benefit out of it. And culturally, within an organisation, there's some metrics I'll pop up in a short while. But the organisation benefits from having that mentoring kind of culture. Great for diversity inclusion, great for employee engagement, great for building common understanding, shared values. And so it's a win-win-win. So building a mentoring kind of coaching culture into a business is a massive win. The how's a little bit more difficult, we'll come on to.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. And we just have one more question from Kamal, who says, are coaching and mentoring being used interchangeably, or is there a subtle difference between the two terms?
There's a difference between the two terms, but this is part of the challenge. In many cases, you get some conflicting guidance. So I actually did a discussion around this a few weeks ago. And so there's bodies out there. There's something called the EMCC, European Mentoring and Coaching Council. One common framework for mentoring and coaching practice. So a number of people who are seen as authorities are using the phrases by and large interchangeably. But when you explore it, there are a number of differences. I'll give you 3 examples now just to try and help answer the question. So one is, in my experience, predominantly people will coach and expect some degree of payment, unless they're doing it within their own business domain, where mentoring is by and large always kind of, philanthropic and done as a way of giving back. Secondly, coaching has practice established with it around something called supervision and something called reflection. And so if you maintain a coaching accreditation, you have to evidence a series of practices around self-development, where mentoring tends to be more ad hoc by practice. And thirdly, coaching very rarely strays out of that top end of the non-directive spectrum, whereas mentoring, you branch out a little bit and you become from time to time a bit more directive to try and serve the interests of your mentor. But there is, quite literally, I did an hour's discussion around that very point, Kamal. So they are used interchangeably in many occasions, but I think there are some subtle but really important differences.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. And that's our questions. I've got Mike's ones for the end as well.
Perfect. So let me crack on and try and get there. So I'm going to talk about the mentee benefits and then the mentor benefits. And ultimately, we're seeing this mentoring as a learning and development relationship. So your development needs to be planned, needs a purpose. But everybody who wants to develop their professional career, everybody who wants to develop personally, needs support. And this is where it comes in. And so you get a concept, I think, of reactive and proactive reasons for entering into mentoring. The reactive is you face some kind of barrier. And this happens a lot, because when we work in a business and it's someone else's business, then it's not set up just for your own development. You have to try and create opportunities. So here's a list of things from a larger list, the kind of things that might be barriers that mentoring could help you overcome. Lack of self-confidence. It will always build self-awareness. It's fantastic for that. You may have a lack of opportunity in your workplace. You're starting to explore, how do I get around that? Could I do something different? Could I take a different career direction? It may be people just have unrealistic expectations, or they don't understand the art of the possible, for example. So there's a series of kind of reactive, I need to get over a barrier, I need to clear a blocker. And then there's people who look at their career and think, here's an opportunity. Mentoring could really help me. I could get benefits out of mentoring. And there could be a number of different drives. It could be, I want to meet more people. I want to make connections. I want to try and build a network outside of my day job. You'll see that self-awareness crops up again. It's a common kind of goal. It may be that people actually want to meet and achieve goals. They want some guidance about what do sensible goals look like? How do I do that? They might want what I call a safe place. What I mean by that is quite often people feel a bit inhibited about asking questions at work about their work because they feel, I should know that, or I was told that last week and I've forgotten. Being a mentor is being absolutely non-judgmental. And so if you're asked a question, it's a good question. Answer the question and support your mentee. In a workplace where people are busier and people get a little bit more frustrated, people are under pressure, quite often it's difficult to ask questions about the workplace. Confidence, connections, all of those good things. But by and large, it falls into the category of you're driven towards mentoring because you see the benefits, or you find mentoring because it's a really powerful kind of outlet and it gives you a chance to solve a challenge. I've covered this slide in every single career development presentation I've done. And this is something called the 70-20-10 model. And it was established in the 80s. This is still learning and development best practice. Your colleagues in HR teams will major on this. And this basically says in your workplace, roundabout, the percentage is a little bit approximate, 70% of your time, but the vast majority of your time you're doing your day job. You're learning on the job. You get feedback in the moment. If you do something well, you get praise. If you do something badly, you get kind of called out. And hopefully, we get a bit of training. What we're missing to get that 100% of your learning and development opportunities is a little bit outside of the workplace. It's something called social learning, mentoring, coaching, networking, role modeling, the interaction with people outside of the direct workplace kind of context. So not part of the job, this interaction outside of the workplace. Like I say, networking is a great thing. It's a great thing you get from being part of the APM, for example. And this is exactly where mentoring sits. And thinking about mentoring and actually taking mentoring forward unlocks a potentially missing 20% of your learning and development opportunities. So to put that into context, this is what I'd call the absolute foundation. So whatever your views are about taking your learning and your development, your professional and personal development forward, you need a foundation. And so if you're in a good working environment and it's supportive and you know exactly what you have to do and you know how to do what you have to do, you've got a foundation to move forward. If you can't say yes to those two things as an aside, it's not really a mentoring thing. You need to look at that. You need to work closely with your colleagues to address that, because that'll be an inhibitor. However effective mentoring or coaching or other options may be, you've got to get past that point. But with that foundation, you're in a workplace, and by and large, it's positive because you're getting experience, you're acquiring knowledge, you get some training, you can shadow people, you get feedback, you might have role models, you've got processes that tell you what to do. So your day job, by and large, is a really developmental place to be, to a 70-80% kind of tolerance. The question I would pose, as you can see at the bottom of the page, whose agenda are you on? And in reality, businesses are there to be successful commercially. And so you're probably getting a lot of direction about being good at your job. That's in the business interest. You're probably getting training because that will help you be good at your job, which is in the business interest. But does your organization have a culture, to go back to Kamal's point, where mentoring is natural? Do you have opportunities to be mentored, to be coached, to network outside of your business? And this is really where, we look at mentoring as something extra. It's the day job plus, not instead of, not replacing, not kind of co-locating, but really performance in your role is the primary focus of your development at work. And you're going to praise, and by and large people say, what did you do this year? What do you have to do next year? And so it's got a narrow focus as well. If you want to think about your career and where you want to be in 3 or 4 years' time, it's difficult to do that in the workplace. Other than you might get engagement and thought process around things you could do in your business in that 3 or 4 years. And so, by and large, as well as you go through appraisals and you get objectives set, the context is more about, well, there's some kind of gap between you and your role description. And so it all becomes a lot more professional rather than personal. And that personal development gets a little bit left behind. And this is where things like mentoring start to open up additional avenues and give you more. They don't take anything away from the workplace, they add. And ultimately, where you're trying to get to is a journey in your development, professionally and personally, from the current reality, as it's referred to, which is your workplace, your role, your day job, and your thinking around, where you want to get to, where you want to be. And mentoring, for example, will take you there. And it'll be different from the workplace in the sense of the little green ticks you can see. The focus is on your agenda. So mentoring, coaching, it's always the mentee or the coachee's agenda. And you'll be taking 100% of your learning and development opportunities. And you'll be able to apply focus not just for your professional development, which naturally comes in the workplace, but your personal development as well. Some of those behaviors will be getting developed just through the act of being mentored, particularly self-awareness. And you can explore potential, where workplace, by and large, we get measured on performance. And your future extends beyond this year, next year. And you'll get a different pair of eyes, a different brain, a different perspective to give you that safe place to go and kind of what if and art of the possible type of conversations. Now, the mentor benefits, going straight on, I like a few quotes every now and then, is this giving back thing. And maybe it's a little bit my age. I'm getting a lot closer to retirement than the beginning of my career. But you get this sense of wanting to kind of contribute. But you get this really, really positive kind of feel-good factor when you enter into a mentoring relationship that's positive. and you have a conversation with your mentee, and it's about the things that they've done. And you go back and look at your notes from 3 months ago and go, wow, what a journey you've been on, which is, as an aside, why celebrating success is so important. But the mental benefits, emotional intelligence, is a great place to start. And emotional intelligence, I posted a blog on this just the other day, this week. Emotional intelligence, something known as EQ, is more important than IQ. IQ is the conventional measure of how clever or intelligent people are, and it's a factual based, two-dimensional kind of thing, where emotional intelligence is about relationships, interaction, influencing. It's a staple of leadership. And those core components, empathy in particular, self-awareness, I've mentioned probably for the 18th time, you get this out of mentoring. And a lot of the skills, when if you write two lists of, what's a good mentor look like, what does a good leader look like, you get an awful lot of common ground. And so the qualities of being an effective leader, developing leadership skills, is a byproduct and a natural part of mentoring. And how you sustain a mentoring relationship as a mentor isn't by bossing people about or having authority. It's about trying to inspire. It's about trying to find the interest. It's about trying to light a spark. It's about trying to help bring to the fore potential. And it's about authenticity. All of those things sit in this real Venn diagram between leadership and what a mentor does. Effective communication. So where you can't tell people, and you're kind of asking questions more than giving answers, you've got to work hard. It's quite difficult mentally to have a conversation for half an hour without asking a closed question. Because naturally we get to, particularly in program project management, we want to get towards closure. Outcome, date, know what you need to do, crack on. It's a very different set of skills and a different kind of mental thought process we go to. It stretches us, which is great. And so, you'll start working with people in programs and projects. You'll start working with people as a mentor, different backgrounds, different environment, different perspectives. You may use different words to mean the same thing, because that's what happens in your business. So you have to learn to adapt. And learning to adapt to communicate to a mentee, learning to adapt to talk to a client or a stakeholder, it's all part of the same equation. So this is all very developmental, personally and professionally, for the mentors as well. And effective communication, again, because it's really important, particularly in light of the pandemic and the prevalence of remote working. And we're not all going to go back to exactly the world we had pre-COVID in terms of office and our working kind of patterns. And so when you're working and you haven't got the ability to read those kind of signals, and people quite often tell you when they're not listening, people quite often tell you when they're not interested, not by saying, I'm not listening, I'm not interested. You see it. You can look at someone and go, they're not really here. They're not present. So you really need to listen. You really need to look for signals, and particularly if you've got the camera on, you really have to work at this communication piece, and that will reap dividends in a professional role in any kind of program project environment. And the act of reflection is great. So reflection had quite a lot to do with my epiphany. I realised that up until 4 years ago, when I'd had this long career delivering programs and projects, I was driven by outcomes, make things happen, get things done, that I didn't do anything naturally that helped with my self-awareness. I didn't really get feedback from people below the people I was working for. So I missed a lot of the signals from the people I was working with. And in reality, I thought of myself as a leader, but I wasn't leading, I was directing, which was great, but that's about 60% of the kind of skills and expertise I really needed to be fully effective in the role. So reflection is a great thing. It also really helps you identify things you've done well. It just makes you think about your achievements as well, which is positive. So a few numbers before we get to the back end. So this is all scientific research. I've quoted the source. You'll trip over percentages like this if you just go and have a quick Google on the subject of mentoring benefits. But the whys are quite important. And this goes a little bit, Kamal, to your question. 71% of Fortune 500 companies. This was 5 years ago. If that number isn't greater than 71%, I will eat my hat. Because investing in leadership capability pays off in performance, productivity, and innovation. It's great for diversity inclusion. I've said it's great for retention. It's also great for attracting resource. As I got involved in assessment centres for graduates coming into our business, and I think about the questions I was asked, one of the most common ones is, will I get a mentor? It's almost like an expectation you know, where it was never like that in my day, sounding old. 97% of people, mentoring is valuable to them. Yet, you know, only 37% of professionals, according to Forbes, actually have a mentor. It's just, well, that doesn't quite square that circle. And 89% of those who have been mentored will go on to mentor others. And for people thinking about mentoring, and for people thinking about you know, their own mentoring relationships, do not rule out being a mentor. Don't feel like you've got to have a certain exam that you pass, or you've got to have at least 15 years experience. You don't. I think mentoring is much more accessible, but because of a bit of mystique around it, people feel a bit inhibited about saying, I'd like to be a mentor. It's there to be explored. It's beneficial. You need to spend a bit of time refining your listening kind of skills. You need to develop some kind of interpersonal skills, but that's a sound investment in your own personal and professional development. And there are other statistics available, as you can see. And just to give a slightly shade on that, Gartner, and you'll all have heard of Gartner. I mean, they really do publish materials that shape how businesses kind of engage and how businesses kind of change. They're a very, very reputable, sought after kind of perspective, you know. And this isn't all about promotion, by the way. I kind of worry a little bit when statistics go up about people got a pay rise, people got promoted. The major thing you'll get out of being a mentor or being mentored is fulfillment. It's engagement. It's all of those positive, feel-good kind of emotional kind of factors. And then looking at it in terms of CEOs, so these are senior people, and you wouldn't necessarily think about people of my age, people of CEO kind of seniority, having a mentor, but it never stops being beneficial. Sometimes coaching is a slightly better outlet, but mentoring isn't just for people at an early stage of their career. You know, you don't hit 25, 30, 35 and go, I'm too old to be mentored. That never happens. And also a little bit down the bottom there you can see about, you know, a millennial kind of perspective. And a great thing about, you know, why you write your goals down is because statistically, and I've seen a different statistic worded in different ways, but all to the same end, about you write your goals down, it's 70% more likely if you then go and tell someone as well. So writing it down, 40%, and actually exchanging that with people, making it almost like a commitment because you're telling people about it, letting the cat out of the bag, 70%. So something to think about. So we're near the end now, and I just wanted to share a couple of critical success factors around mentoring. This is a subject all in its own right, but just to kind of close off and get to the questions. I really haven't left you much time. I do apologise. Is understand what mentoring is, make a conscious decision, and make sure by testing yourself that you've got a purpose. You could write a sentence that says, I want to be mentored because, complete that sentence. Yeah. And then basically, strong sense of purpose, take you through on that journey. And if you've got someone in a mentee and someone in a mentor both committed to their own development, and you take stock and you recalibrate over time, you will have a lasting and very productive mentoring relationship. And equally, celebrate success. That's the thing. Mentoring is supposed to help you develop. You will achieve milestones on your journey. Recognize those and take a moment to really celebrate that success. So before I hand back to Rob for a little time for questions, what I would say, and probably topically if we do time out, please feel free, guys, if you want to discuss any of these things further, you can link in with me on LinkedIn, clearly. And I've got a portal with, you know, information around mentoring, coaching, development. But please, probably in the first instance, just link in and let's have a conversation. Rob, apologies, I've kind of overrun a little bit in my enthusiasm.
Not a problem at all, Richard. It's good information, and I'm sure a lot of people will connect with you outside of this. So thank you for that. I'm going to put up that final Slido question just to see how people feel about mentoring, and we're keen to also get further feedback from people. But I'll jump into the questions if that's okay. So Sharon has asked, is it possible to mentor someone who, is it possible to mentor someone who works for you, or does this make it too difficult?
It's possible, but it dilutes the experience. So if you think about some of the benefits, Sharon, of mentoring, part of it is that kind of safe place to go where people perhaps might feel inhibited about asking things about the workplace, or might feel inhibited about being totally open because you know the same people. So there are places, and there's part of my business where line managers also act as mentors. It's possible under the right circumstances it can be beneficial, but by and large, the better option would be to get somebody external to the workplace to be a mentor.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard, and thank you, Sharon. Vishal has asked, in this new way of working, i.e. remotely or working from home, what are the impacts and opportunities since there is a big change in shift in professional way of working?
Well, I think it's something new. It's something we're adapting to. And I think mentoring is great to help people make a transition of some description. Sometimes it's moving into a new role, but I think these change of working patterns, I think, is a great opportunity and a great outlet for mentoring. So the opportunity is, to work with a mentor and help find your own way through that. The threat, I think, is I'll probably turn that to an opportunity as well, is that you lose that proximity, that face-to-face contact, and therefore the signals you get when you're sat in a room with somebody or sat opposite somebody, you've got to work harder to interpret, you've got to listen more, and you've got to be much more conscious of really being clear about what's behind the words as well. That's the kind of the threat, because mentoring works much better when you're engaging one-to-one, face-to-face.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. Just to let everyone know, we are recording today's session, and Richard is allowing us to share the slides as well. A couple have asked about that information that we passed over at the end, and we will make those available. Richard, I'm going to be cheeky, if you don't mind, and just complete one last question, and then we'll bring it to a close. So Nick has asked, how can organisations facilitate the most impactful or effective matching of mentor and mentee without forcing the issue?
Well, fantastic question, and something that I'm in discussions within Sopra Steria about. The most wholesome thing about starting a mentoring relationship is that the mentee feels choice. And so a platform where, almost like a kind of a APM hub or a LinkedIn kind of thing, where mentors and mentees have a bio, they're able to record the kind of skills they've got as a mentor, the experience, or as a mentee, they can be clear about the reasons they want to be mentored, and the mentee makes a conscious decision to match with a mentor themselves. So investment in a platform is the golden ticket. In many cases, it has to be done mandronically, as it were. And so in Sopra Steria, for the project mentoring program that I run, we have a committee of people who understand the individuals, and we talk through what we think the best match would be. And we ask our mentees to fill out a short kind of questionnaire about the areas that are important to them. And we try and match on that basis using a group of people to rule out any kind of subconscious bias. But a platform is a dream ticket.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. You can probably see some of the key takeaways popping up on the screen. People are saying great knowledge, thank you. It looks like someone's going to reach out to their management to get a mentor in the future. So that's really great. I've got some other messages popping in, people saying thank you for your time and your energy throughout. So it really does leave me to say, Richard, on behalf of the APM, thank you for giving up your time, for sharing some key information today.
I really enjoyed it, Rob. Thank you for the opportunity.
Not a problem. I'd also like to say thank you to everyone who's joined us today, got involved in the Slido questions, and also posted some great questions. So thank you for joining us.
Yeah, I really enjoyed the engagement as well. Thank you, guys.
Excellent. Thank you, Richard. Just to let you know, Richard is giving a session next month, so have a look on the APM website under the events listings for Richard's webinar, but a whole host of other events. It really just leaves me to say thank you again for everyone for attending. I hope you keep well and enjoy the rest of your day. So bye for now.
Thank you all.